Imagine a world where our green fields transform into vast barren expanses, where the diversity of flavors and colors that nature offers is replaced by uniformity, and where the earth's vitality is sacrificed in the name of immediate profit. This is the world of conventional agriculture, a system that, while it has fed millions, now brings us to the brink of an unprecedented environmental, social, and economic crisis. Are we ignoring the signs from nature calling for change? Are we willing to compromise the health of future generations in exchange for convenience in the present? In this video, we will explore the profound repercussions of conventional agriculture and question its long-term sustainability. Conventional agriculture, dominant in many parts of the world, faces increasing criticism due to its unsustainable practices that negatively impact the environment, society, and economy. This production system, while essential in meeting global food demand, shows serious flaws in terms of long-term sustainability. But what are the environmental impacts of conventional agriculture? Conventional agriculture has been the dominant model of agricultural production for decades, feeding a growing global population, but not without costs. The practices employed, focused on maximizing short-term yields, have long-lasting environmental consequences that compromise our planet's integrity and the future sustainability of agriculture itself. Starting with the intensive use of chemical inputs, conventional agriculture heavily relies on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides to increase crop productivity, a practice that, while effective in the short term, carries a host of environmental and public health consequences. Synthetic fertilizers, which often contain high concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, can lead to the eutrophication of water bodies, resulting in dead zones where aquatic life cannot survive due to oxygen depletion. Pesticides, on the other hand, can contaminate soil and groundwater and bioaccumulate in the food chain, impacting not only non-target species, but also human health. Another environmental impact of conventional agriculture is soil erosion. Conventional agricultural practices, such as deep plowing and monoculture, are particularly damaging to soil integrity. Continuous plowing breaks down soil structure, reducing its ability to retain water and nutrients and increasing its susceptibility to erosion by wind and water. This not only decreases the productivity of agricultural lands over time, but also contributes to the sedimentation of rivers and lakes, impacting aquatic ecosystems and water quality. The loss of arable soil is a growing crisis that threatens global food security and agricultural sustainability. The reduction of biodiversity is also a major environmental impact of conventional agriculture. Monoculture, a defining feature of conventional agriculture, involves cultivating large areas of land with a single plant species. This practice drastically simplifies the environment, eliminating the plant and animal diversity needed for a resilient ecosystem. The lack of diversity makes crops more vulnerable to pests and diseases, which can spread rapidly under monoculture conditions. Moreover, reduced biodiversity limits ecosystems' ability to provide services such as pollination, natural pest control, and soil quality maintenance. Another major environmental impact of conventional agriculture is intensive water consumption. Conventional agriculture often resorts to intensive irrigation systems that use large volumes of water. In many arid regions or those facing water stress, this excessive water use exacerbates scarcity, affecting not only water availability for other uses, but also the health of aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. The competition for water resources among farmers, communities, and industries can lead to conflicts and require complex water management to avoid the depletion of vital sources. Conventional agriculture also contributes to climate change. Conventional agriculture is a significant source of greenhouse gases, with emissions stemming from fossil fuel use in farming machinery, the production of chemical inputs, and soil management practices that release carbon and methane. These emissions directly contribute to global warming and climate change, which in turn can alter weather patterns and negatively affect agricultural productivity. creating a vicious cycle of greater reliance on unsustainable practices to maintain yields. Finally, conventional agriculture's dependence on fossil fuel is a major environmental impact. Many practices employed in conventional agriculture rely on a substantial amount of energy derived from fossil fuels. From the production of chemical inputs to the operation of farming machinery, dependence on oil makes conventional agriculture vulnerable to oil price fluctuations, which can lead to economic instability. Furthermore, this dependence contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, exacerbating issues related to climate change. But conventional agriculture does not only have environmental impacts, it also has major social impacts. What are the social impacts of conventional agriculture? Conventional agriculture, despite its effectiveness in producing large quantities of food, brings a series of significant social impacts that often harm rural communities in surrounding areas. These impacts not only contribute to growing social inequality, but also deteriorate the quality of life of individuals directly involved in this type of agriculture. One of the major social impacts of conventional agriculture is land concentration and social inequality. One of the most significant social impacts of conventional agriculture is the concentration of land ownership in the hands of a few entities, usually large agribusiness corporations or very wealthy landowners. This centralization of agricultural property results in a pronounced economic disparity, where small farmers and rural workers often find themselves without sufficient resources to compete or maintain their own lands. The marginalization of small farmers leads to a loss of agricultural and cultural diversity, as traditional farming practices and local crops are replaced by large-scale monocultures geared toward the global market. Moreover, the lack of access to land for people who wish to become farmers but cannot afford to buy land leaves food production in the hands of a few, which is undemocratic. Another social impact of conventional agriculture is the displacement of communities and creation of green deserts. The expansion of large conventional farms often displaces local communities, forcing residents to leave their lands, sometimes due to unfair practices such as land grabbing or economic pressure. These areas transformed into vast monoculture fields are often referred to as green deserts, where there is little to no contribution to the well-being of the local community. Such regions suffer from a decline in social services, infrastructure, and opportunities for diverse employment, exacerbating poverty and reducing the community's economic resilience. Dangerous working conditions are also a social impact of conventional agriculture. Workers on conventional farms often operate in extremely hazardous conditions. Regular exposure to harmful pesticides and other agricultural chemicals can lead to a range of health issues, including but not limited to respiratory illnesses, cancers, neurological disorders, and reproductive problems. These risks are worsened by a lack of adequate safety measures and insufficient training on the safe handling of these chemicals. Finally, human health impacts from pesticides are also a major social impact of conventional agriculture. The intensive use of pesticides in conventional agriculture affects not only those who work directly with these chemicals, but also nearby populations and end consumers. Pesticide residues can persist on agricultural products reaching consumers, presenting long-term health risks. Communities close to large agricultural operations may experience elevated rates of chronic health problems, negatively impacting quality of life and increasing the burden on local healthcare systems. We have already seen the environmental and social impacts of conventional agriculture, but do you really think conventional agriculture is economically viable? When analyzing the economic sustainability of conventional agriculture, significant questions arise that challenge its perceived effectiveness and long-term viability. This analysis delves into the economic foundations of conventional agriculture, revealing hidden weaknesses and dependencies that may compromise its future sustainability. The first point of economic viability of conventional agriculture is its dependence on government subsidies. One of the pillars sustaining the economic viability of conventional agriculture is the extensive use of government subsidies. These subsidies are intended to keep production costs low, especially concerning major inputs like synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. This practice creates a market distortion, hiding the true environmental and production costs of these inputs and promoting an agricultural economy that may not be sustainable without state financial intervention. Continued dependence on these subsidies creates an artificial economy where market prices do not reflect the real cost of environmental degradation, public health, and natural resources. Another point that challenges the real economic viability of conventional agriculture is its vulnerability to market fluctuations. Conventional agriculture is inextricably tied to the fossil fuel economy, not only for direct use in agricultural machinery, but also for the central role these fuels play in the production of agricultural inputs. The volatility of oil prices and other energy sources can therefore have direct impacts on agricultural production costs. Fluctuations in global prices of fossil fuels and industrialized inputs introduce a layer of economic instability that can affect the profitability and financial viability of conventional agriculture, making it vulnerable to external shocks that can drastically alter cost and price dynamics. In addition to the vulnerability of monocultures to climate change, pests, and diseases, we have seen various environmental and social impacts, as well as how economically unviable conventional agriculture can be. But if we continue practicing conventional agriculture, what will happen to our planet? If we continue conventional agriculture without significant changes, the long-term impacts on our planet could be profound and potentially irreversible, affecting all aspects of environmental, social, and economic health. First, we will face a high level of soil degradation, pollution from pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, depletion of water resources, displacement of traditional populations, and social inequality in land access. Public health will be compromised due to exposure to pesticides and chemicals that can cause cancer, neurological disorders, and reproductive issues, affecting both farm workers and the general population through residues in food. Cross-contamination and genetic erosion caused by genetically modified organisms, GMOs, may endanger wild or traditional genetic varieties, leading to genetic contamination and loss of biodiversity. This threatens crop resilience by reducing genetic variability, which is crucial for adaptation to diseases and climate change. Not to mention the impact of GMOs on public health. Continuing current conventional agricultural practices could lead to an ecologically impoverished and unstable planet, with depleted natural resources and a population facing worsening health issues and increasing social and economic inequalities. This scenario underscores the urgent need for a transition to more sustainable and ecologically responsible farming methods, such as organic, regenerative, and agroforestry practices that respect and rejuvenate ecosystems, promote social justice, and ensure long-term economic security. It has thus become clear that conventional farming methods are not only unsustainable, they threaten the very essence of our existence on this planet. Soil degradation, loss of biodiversity, pollution from pesticides and fertilizers, and increasing economic disparity are just the tip of the iceberg. The shift to permaculture, organic agriculture, and regenerative practices is no longer an idealistic option, but an urgent necessity to restore balance and ensure that our farming practices can sustain and nurture future generations. Reflecting on the impacts presented, each of us is called to reconsider daily choices and support a global movement toward agricultural practices that respect the earth and the life it sustains. This video was not just informative, but a call to action, because together we have the power to shape a future where agriculture works in harmony with nature, not against it. See you soon. Let's move towards a bountiful earth.